Radio.
Silence is a common phenomenon within German political discourse whenever colonial cruelty and genocide are discussed. It took Germany 120 years to officially recognize the genocide in Namibia. Today, we are witnessing another ongoing genocide committed by Israeli fascist government, backed by Israeli army and settlers against the Palestinian people, significantly sponsored by German authorities in collaboration with the wealthy Western world. Despite 61% of the German population being against the Israeli genocide of Palestinians, it is crucial for the same society to actively oppose it while their tax money is being used to kill civilians. To break the silence, in the city of Münster in Germany, a few activists have decided to take over museum space to remind the elite society that silence is violence. In today's episode, we will listen to the voices of these activists.
We, a group of activists, disrupted a museum event at the LWL Museum in Münster to demand an end to the genocide in Gaza and the repression of Palestinian voices in Germany. We have chosen the museum for our action on the one hand to criticize the institutional art and culture scene in Germany and hold it accountable, which has not only since October 7 systematically cancelled Palestinian voices and people in solidarity, and on the other hand to confront an audience who does not show up to our vigils and demonstrations. We held up signs with phrases such as "I stand here for," followed by the silenced name of Palestinians and people in solidarity. We distributed information flyers about the situation in Gaza and of course called for a ceasefire and an end to the occupation. The campaign lasted over an hour and a half. We did not expect this. The police were already there beforehand. They were just watching but didn't interrupt us, and neither did the museum nor the police asked us to leave. And after 2 hours, one of us was told by the police that if we leave now, there will be no consequences. As we were about to leave the museum, the police suddenly surrounded us. They pushed us towards the exit, away from the visitors of the museum, and took our IDs. And 25 people were then charged with trespassing. The police also categorized the action as an unannounced assembly, on the basis of which additional charges were filed. And we were banned from the site until 6 o'clock in the morning of the following day. There was a white woman in the museum who was shouting, "Germany has a responsibility for Israel forever." If your feeling of guilt justifies the killing of more than 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza, justifies apartheid and 75 years of occupation, your feeling of guilt shouldn't take you anywhere but to therapy. And I also think that this whole talk about German guilt blurs what we are actually facing, which is pure German racism and pure German nationalism, and the criminalization of Palestinians and people in solidarity is systematic. The dehumanization of Palestinians is necessary for Germany's imperialist interests. And you can see this arms export to Israel have increased tenfold in the last 3 months. While rents are getting higher and higher, many people in Germany can no longer afford groceries. The state uses our tax money to tear people to pieces, calls it Staatsräson, and if you say something against it, you're labeled as terrorist or anti-Semitic. And then there are white people that feel like Che Guevara after their first anti-AfD demo, were ripping the Palestine flag out of the hands of Palestinians who would be the first to be deported, demonstrating against fascism in Germany, while cheering up fascist Israel. That's Germany in a nutshell, basically. We are criminalized at our demonstrations and vigils. Palestinian art is being cancelled. In our universities, we are denied rooms for discussions or film screenings, and we have to deal with police presence there. Or they ban these events for so-called security reasons. And under the term security reasons, they can basically ban everything and criminalize us. So of course, we take back the places that are denied to us and resist this repression. Of course, we go to places where people don't want to hear us. And of course, we have to go to the institutions that are complicit in the criminalization of Palestinians. They want to label the language we use, the frequency in which we speak, as violent and anti-Semitic to distract people from the actual violence, which is Israel committing a genocide, brutally killing civilians, 30,000. So who is the criminal? Who has the power? Who decides who gets to write this article? Who decides what news should be printed? Throughout history, people who resisted the violent state status quo were always criminalized. So what's happening now is deeply rooted in capitalist state violence. And if the racist status quo of the state feels disturbed by us, we know we're doing the right thing. There was one journalist in the museum who followed us the whole time. He took photos of all the activists and even helped the police to push us towards the exit of the museum. And it's like, lol, what kind of journalist interacts with the police in this way? But German journalism is a disaster in itself. It's like copy-paste what the IOF says and then be like, hey, I wrote a politically relevant article, give me a meaningless reporter award for this. So anyways, one activist confronted him and he didn't listen to her. He was only tone policing and justified Israel's crimes. And people like this guy really believe that genocide is self-defense because of internalized racism and nationalism and the state's successful dehumanization of Palestinians. And that's so shocking because you see that not only Germany learned nothing from its history, but it's also using the same strategies of dehumanization and state violence again. And even more shocking to see that it's working. And Annalena Baerbock and Olaf Scholz are not just silent, they loudly agree with the genocide. They support it, and they have made a decision against humanity. So we should never forget and never forgive this. But yeah, I also hear the people saying what's happening in Gaza is horrible, thank you for doing this. But they don't take action. And it's so dangerous that for some people what's happening in Gaza is like a sad film they consume on their phone, switch off, and then nothing happens. Life goes on. It's like a silent agreement embedded in the last years of their humanity. But your sadness doesn't liberate Palestine. Standing with the resistance and in solidarity does. I recently saw a quote saying that the first day of peace will be the last day of occupation. So until that day, we will be loud, we will own the streets, we will disrupt capitalist production, strike, boycotts, and we will definitely not make it comfortable for those who either remain silent or actively support the genocide.
Hey everybody, I was one of the activists of the creative action in the LWL Museum für Kunst und Kultur on February 9th during the long night of the museum in Münster, Germany. And I want to focus on the question why the action was placed in the museum and why we chose it. Just a few days ago from now, the iconic Palestinian painter Faid Gaibin, born in Hiribia in the Gaza Strip in 1947, was killed by the State of Israel. He was mainly known for his folklore art and depiction of the Palestinian resistance through existence and culture. His figures are captured emotions as they labor, protest, tend to their fields, celebrate and dance. The raw power of the working class is there in Gaben's artwork as it was in him. He passed away as the result of the Israeli occupation. He was waiting for the Israeli authorities to give him permission to leave Gaza to receive medical aid after multiple requests, but he didn't get it. 3 days ago, at the Berlinale in Berlin, the movie No Other Land from the Israeli-Palestinian filmmaker duo Yuval Abraham and Basil Adra won a prize for Best Movie. The movie depicts the brutal reality of the Israeli occupation and the far-right settler movements. While the two received the award, they were using the stage to call for equality between Israelis and Palestinians, a ceasefire in Gaza, and an end of the Israeli apartheid. They were also unmisunderstandable addressing the complicity of the German state in the genocide and condemned the silencing of Palestinian voices by the German state and its institutions. But instead of seriously listening to affected voices, they call for actual justice, instead of recognizing the bloody and true reality of the brutal state of Israel in its present and the past, and instead to condemn the fascist politics, the apartheid, the settler colonialism, and the genocide. German media again spread false and shamefully misused accusations of anti-Semitism, continues dehumanizing Palestinian people as terrorists, and German cultural institutions continue to stay silent. These are not isolated cases, because in both cases, Germany, especially the German state, doesn't speak a word about the truth, what is happening in Gaza today, or what have been happened to the Palestinian people in over 75 years of occupation. In both cases, German cultural and art institutions prefer to stay silent, and with it, they still pick the side of the oppressor. Still the side of the oppressor. They stay silent, or they're actively silencing people who stand up for Palestine and for justice. Like we have also recognized in the case of the Palestinian author Adania Shibli at the Frankfurter Buchmesse last year, who was to receive a prestigious award, has been cancelled since October 7th happened. The LWL Museum für Kunst und Kultur in Münster haven't spoke a word about the over 140 days ongoing genocide in Gaza. They didn't lose a word about the fascist and colonialist state of Israel. And they didn't say anything about artists and culture creating people being systematically cancelled, silenced in Germany for showing solidarity with the Palestinian people who are fighting against oppressions since decades. The LWL Museum put up signs in their windows against the anti-AfD New Year's reception, while at the same time they're filing lawsuits against us, activists, that actually spoke up peacefully against the fascism and the current genocide. These double standards are pure hypocrisy. Especially as a German art institution, as a German museum, where history showed us too clearly, and still is, that their basements are full of colonial stolen art, are full of the cultural heritages that got violently robbed from the people that Germany oppressed and colonialized for years, and are full of blood. It's an unbelievable but real shame that the LWL Museum for Kunst und Kultur in Münster is not standing up against this unjust and is not speaking up against the genocide, for a ceasefire, and against the occupation. So while they are staying silent on their own, they support the forced silencing of voices of justice to cover their own complicity and failure of taking responsibility. So, since Germany is declining more and more spaces to talk about Palestine and cancelling more and more voices which are in solidarity with the Palestinians, we've chose the LWL Museum as the exact place to call out the support of German art institutions in general and the LWL Museum in specific. Because this unacceptable status of German oppression and repression is held up by those in power and its accomplices which back them. And we see them, the German art and culture institution like the LWL Museum, as one of the accomplices. But the more they force us to stay silent, the louder we will be. So I will end this statement with the still relevant and very strong words of Bertolt Brecht. When injustice becomes right, resistance becomes duty.
Unrest Radio.